Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to the US once again, but this time we're going to go a little bit south of us here in Connecticut to New York, and we're actually going to revisit a brewery that has featured on the channel a couple of times before. Now, the last beer that I had from this brewery was really quite nice. It was a big, sweet imperial stout. I don't think you could really call it a pastry stout, but I really enjoyed that one. And prior to that, this brewery has featured on the channel as part of collaboration reviews, and I've always been really impressed with the stuff that they've been involved in. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a very popular beer style. It's a style that I haven't tried from this brewery of their own making, I guess we could say. It's the first non-collaboration beer within this particular style category from them that I've tried. But it is supposed to be a really quite nice one, and this is yet another one that just kind of caught my eye because of the name and the artwork and stuff like this. But as I say, I know this is a very good brewery. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to Brooklyn, just to the east of Manhattan in New York, and we're going to have a look at another beer from KCBC, or Kings County Brewers Collective. So this particular beer is called Gulp Fiction. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this is a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, in Josh's local shop there were a couple of beers from KCBC. He said he'd never tried anything from this brewery, but as I said, I knew this brewery are pretty good, and I mean, I do like the kind of Tarantino reference in there. And controversially, Pulp Fiction isn't my favourite Tarantino film. I don't think it's quite as good as some of the other ones. Django probably would be my favourite, and Inglourious Basterds is great as well. But yeah, this one just kind of caught my eye because I thought it was really nice, and the guys looked like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in that too. But yeah, Gulp Fiction, New England Double IPA, 8% ABV. This will be my first solo brewery New England IPA review from these guys, and they are supposed to be pretty damn good at this particular style. So let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Kings County Brewers Collective before, and we will see about adding more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things, and we will continue to add to that over the next wee while. But do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some really great beers across the world these days. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about KCBC once again. So Kings County Brewers Collective are based in Brooklyn, which is just to the kind of southeast of Manhattan, and the company was founded by three guys. This is Tony Bellis, Zach Kinney, and Pete Lengyel. So Tony comes from a management background and was working in services and retail, while Zach has a background in advertising, and Pete spent a number of years working as a microbiologist. So quite an interesting array of skills between these three guys. But Tony and Pete apparently met in home brewing groups, and Pete had previously completed a brewing apprenticeship at Brooklyn Brewery, and then Tony took a job as a forklift driver and keg washer at Greenpoint Beer before working his way up to lead brewer. But the pair sat down together, they wrote up a business plan, and then invited Zach to join them, and he was one of their classmates at the American Brewers Guild in Vermont, and they agreed that combining their skills would form a really solid base to make their own brewery, and they have been very successful. So they settled on the Bushwick area of Brooklyn to set up their brewery, and this had a very strong brewing heritage owing to the number of German immigrants to the area, and they actually produced around 10% of American brewed beer in the year 1900, so this was a big brewing area. But in 2016 they signed a lease on their warehouse on Troutman Street, and over the years they've just been continuing to grow the capacity of the brewery, and they also have an on-site tap room these days that you can go and visit, and I am hopeful that I can go and visit them at some point during my trip here to the US. These guys in Finback are one of the ones that I really want to check out. But as of September 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 615 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and they seem to do a wide variety of different styles actually. A number of imperial stouts, some barley wines, a few different sours these days as well, and quite a number of different kind of New England hazy IPAs. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about KCBC for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So you can see that this one, the artwork on it is absolutely lovely. There you can see John Travolta, and I guess this one's meant to be, well actually, wait, is it? No, the one on the right here, this is meant to be John Travolta, and this one I guess would be Samuel L. Jackson, but of course they've morphed into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You can see the KCBC Brewing Company symbol down there, which is great, and instead of guns they've got these little snake things, which look quite interesting. But you can see plain silver top on the can here. This one is a 1 American pint can, 473 millilitres, 16 fluid ounces in freedom units, and as we said earlier, it's an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA. The hops in this one are Citra Mosaic and Nelson Sauvin, which is quite a classic combination. Citra and Mosaic are of course American, Nelson Sauvin from New Zealand. Citra and Mosaic both 14% alpha acid. Citra is going to give you that nice kind of big juicy mango, a little bit of stronger grapefruit and sharper peach normally, and in a New England it's going to give you quite a little bit of a lemon limey character. Mosaic is going to give you a wee bit of earthiness in your green component, but it's also going to give you a lovely big juicy tangerine note. Nelson Sauvin from New Zealand is going to give you 16% alpha acid and this big kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry type flavour, and quite a potent floral character in my experience too. But yeah, they're saying that this one is double dry hopped and it contains barley, wheat and rye. So yeah, this should be really quite interesting. Really nicely presented. As I said, I had a few beers from KCBC, but this one just kind of caught my eye. I should also point out as well that it says it was canned on the 15th of March, so we're actually drinking this one a little shy of 6 months old. So it's going to be quite interesting just to see how sort of fresh this beer is, because you would expect it to be a little bit fresher than that, considering that we're just in the next state. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see how we get on. This should be really nice. Gulp Fiction, 8% ABV, a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. And yeah, let's have a look. Oh, we've got quite a little bit of foam on this one, so we'll just need to let it calm down. The can did actually feel a little bit hard when we open it up. I maybe should have just let it calm a wee bit before we did, but yeah. Yeah, that has got a hell of a head on it. We'll just need to play it by ear with this one actually. So yeah, let me just line that up again. But yeah, we can certainly have a look at it anyway. So you can see that the beer has poured with a massive kind of cream coloured head on it. You can see really quite foamy actually, but it does get a little bit soapier with bigger bubbles up toward the top of the head there, but it does look pretty nice. Yeah, in terms of the colour of this one, I think to you guys it's actually appearing, I think that's about right actually, what you guys are seeing with the light just now. But yeah, this one, it's got a lovely kind of pale, yeah, sort of pale, almost slightly murky yellow colour. This one, it kind of reminds me of a mixed pineapple mango fruit juice, something like this, like a mixed tropical fruit juice colour. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect its colour as well. But yeah, it just kind of depends. It can vary, you know, it can vary a little bit. You don't often have to care about barrel aging or adjuncts and things in this particular style of beer. But yeah, for me, this one pretty much looks the part of a New England. Level of haze in this beer, it's certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest of New Englands that I've come across. There might be a little bit of sediment in this one considering how old the beer is. But yeah, we'll just need to wait and see when we actually pour the thing out. So yeah, not the soupiest and gloopiest of New England IPAs, and remember the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. That can vary from brewery to brewery and even beer to beer. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look pretty nice, and you can see that head has disappeared a little bit as we've been looking at the appearance of this beer. But honestly, I don't think we need to do too much more in terms of appearance. Let me just put a wee bit more into the glass, because I think this is one that we are going to have to pour kind of gradually, just so it behaves itself. And yeah, sugar up a wee bit at the bottom just to make sure we get any sediment out of there that there might be. It's the only problem with these beers if they have been sitting for a wee while actually. So yeah, that's a nice pour now. So I think we can move on and have a wee look at the aroma of this one and see what it's all about. Yeah. Aroma-wise, this is pretty zesty, pretty wheaty leaning, actually pretty potent in terms of its aroma. And that's quite interesting. So for me, yeah, the aroma of this beer is yeah, the aroma of this beer is pretty, really quite sharp, really quite citrusy leaning, and for me it's quite different to the other New Englands that I've had over the last wee while actually. So as I've said on the channel many times before, for me with the New England IPAs, they can lean a few different ways. They can be sort of more farmhousey and grainy, they can be rye leaning and grainy, or sort of farmhousey and yeasty, rye leaning and grainy. Those are a bit more common elements in American brewed New England IPAs, but you can also have wheaty bitiness, barley malt bread, oaty creaminess, and also sweetness in these beers. And as I say, it can vary from brewery to brewery and beer to beer, but this one strikes me as being more wheaty leaning, a bit more you know, a bit more just kind of potent in its aroma. I don't get immediately rye out of this one, which I find quite interesting. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out in the aroma of the beer. But I will say certainly it does smell pretty damn nice. But I would say the Citra strikes me as being the most potent hop out of the aroma of this beer. So yeah, let's just break that down and describe it a wee bit more in depth as we always do. So the backbone of the beer for me, it's got that lovely fresh white bready bread crust coming out of it. You do get a little bit of woodiness and a little bit of crackery character in this one. Yeah, so lovely little bit of woodiness, lovely little bit of crackery character. And then above that, you start to get the bready notes out of this one. As I say, I'm really not getting so much in the way of like rye brown bread in this beer. You do get a lovely kind of quite bright white bread out of this one. The aroma makes me wonder if there's a little bit of acidulated malt in here, because it is actually really quite sharp and citricy on the nose in some ways. And if I sugar it up, you only get more. You get more of that. You do actually, when you sugar the beer up, you get a little bit of graininess from underneath this one. So yeah, lovely little bit of a kind of grainy, rye bready character from underneath, and then yeah, you start to get fluffy white bread in there. You can smell the wheat. There is quite a little bit of wheaty bitiness out of this one. I wonder if this is maybe using some European type wheat, because I've found that in a number of beers recently, American wheat is pretty damn smooth. So yeah, there is a bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose, a little bit of a sharper, more bitey wheat, kind of densifying out that bready character. And then yeah, you get you don't really get much in the way of oaty creaminess out of this one. I do get a little touch of like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type note out of the beer. But yeah, not overly much actually. It really seems as if this is going to lean toward a more wheaty bitey sort of thing. The aroma of this actually quite reminds me of some of the old Magic Rock brewing beers from Huddersfield in Yorkshire. They always used to like a little bit of acidulated malt, and their beers smell quite like this actually. So yeah, interesting stuff, really interesting stuff. So for me, I think that's everything we really need to say about the malty side of the beer. The only other thing I would add is that it does get a little bit sweeter and more kind of creamy the more that you smell of it. But let's move on to the hoppy side of things. For me, the hoppy side of this beer, the green component is kind of what you'd expect. As I've explained in many reviews before, there are 3 types of hoppings to think about when it comes to IPAs or brewing in general, however you want to look at it. You have early addition hopping within the first hour of the wort boil, which is going to give you mainly bitterness. So yeah, that usually gives you a kind of deep, dank aroma and flavour. You've got late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, which is going to give you mainly it's going to give you mainly flavour and aroma, but a little bit of bitterness and quite a kind of bright floral grassy component. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's going to give you pretty much all flavour and aroma, and again quite a bright green component in terms of both flavour and aroma. So for me, the green component in this beer, you've got a lovely little bit of earthiness in there, a very nice kind of bright floral aromaticity as well. And then, yeah, you've got a lovely big sort of grassy, zesty character as well. So, yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. Yeah, I love that. Well, this one, the green component is really nice. So, on the fruity side of things, this is, for me, there's a lot of Citra character coming out of this one. You get that little bit of kind of pungent grapefruit out of the beer. There's quite a lot of peach as well for me, a very sharp peach actually. Juicy mango. You have got a little bit of like a softer apricot or something in this one, but there is quite a little bit of a lemony, limey character as well. All of these elements are coming from Citra, so it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think this beer is 33, 33, 33 in terms of its ratio, if you like. I think it might be like 50, 25, 25. That wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, on the kind of other notes out of this, you do get a fair little bit of that kind of gooseberry, white-green grapey thing that you would expect of Nelson Sauvin, and you do get a nice big kind of orangey, tangerine type character coming out of this one, which is also really, really nice. So all of that gets a big thumbs up from me. I think this is a really nice smelling beer actually. Yeah, but quite potent and kind of sharp in terms of its aroma actually, so a wee bit different from the other IPAs that I've had in recent times. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the aroma, but as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think we can have a taste of this one now and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Gulp Fiction, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double IPA. My first solo brewery beer review of an IPA from KCBC, Kings County Brewers Collective in Brooklyn, down in New York. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That's really nice. That is a very, very good beer. The interesting thing about this one is the aroma is a lot more punchy and kind of citricy and things than the actual beer is itself. You'll find this is actually just a really nice kind of big, smooth, thick, creamy and slightly sweet New England Double IPA. This is one of these beers that doesn't, the flavour doesn't agree too much with the actual flavour, so that's kind of interesting for sure. But I will say that is really nice, so a big thumbs up to KCBC for this one. This is lovely. Yeah, really good stuff. So it's, you know, if I was tasting this blind, I don't think there's oat in this one, but I would probably guess this was actually quite an oaty leaning New England IPA. When I think about the fact that this one is 6 months old, usually the oaty character will give you a good indicator of how fresh your beer is. And you can feel in this one, it has got a little bit of what I would have suspected would be oaty dryness. I do wonder if it does have a little bit of oat in it as well. But, you know, this is the thing. American brewers don't have to put the ingredients on the beer as you do in Europe. So, yeah, you never quite know. But it's interesting that this one's got rye in it as well, because it's it has got a wee bit more kind of like sweetness to it and a bit of graininess too, which I do like. But, yeah, regardless, it's a really nice New England double. So let's try and break this one down and explain the flavour for you a wee bit more in depth. So, middle third of your palate. That middle third of your palate, you get a lovely little bit of that fresh white bready bread crust in there. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you do get a little tiny hint of woodiness, but I would really focus on that point that it's quite tiny. And there's a little bit of, there is a very slight crackery note to this one, but again, that's very, very tiny. But above the bread crust, you do get this quite dense and really sweet, like wholemeal brown bready character. And I think that's probably the rye coming out of this one. And this is interesting for me as well, because again, it seems like American rye is a little bit sweeter than European rye. European rye would give you this, it really would give you a little bit more kind of dryness and graininess and stuff like that. But generally speaking, as I've said, I believe the American palate is quite a little bit sweeter than the European palate. And that's quite obvious when we try some of these beers, for sure. So yeah, for me, the sweet brown bready character that you get out of this one is absolutely lovely. I really do like that with this beer. But on top of the brown bready layer, you get a really nice kind of sweet and quite dense, actually, white bready character. So that goes together really nicely. Then above that, you can feel an even denser layer of white bread, and it is quite smooth. As I've said, I do think American wheat is smoother and less bitey than European wheat. And it's interesting to see things like this, because obviously in the US, the soil profile, the water profile and stuff is going to be different when you're actually growing these grains, and that's probably what accounts for the differences in flavour and so on. But then again, you might have different varieties of wheat as well. You need to think about that. Spelt wheat that you get from Germany is one of the really old varieties, and that's quite dry and grainy when you taste it. And that's lovely in Hefeweizens, I have to say. But yeah, bread crust, sweeter rye bread, kind of sweeter brown rye bready sort of note, a more dense, sweet white bread, then an even denser, smooth white bready character above that, and then above everything else, it does feel as if there's a little bit of oaty character coming out of this beer. You get a little circle in the middle of that of your palate there, in the middle third of your tongue. As you go down the middle line of your palate, it feels like there's a slightly more dense, oaty, creamy note coming out of the beer, and as you move out toward the edges of your palate, it's you get a little bit more oaty kind of dryness there. But in the very dead centre of your palate, there's a little circle there with a little bit of Werther's Original, butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of this one, which is absolutely great. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. So, for me, that covers everything we really need to say about the middle third of the palate, actually. So we can move on to the back third of your tongue, but remember the general trend with your palate, that sweeter flavours will come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back. So yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel the sweet sort of rye bready character in the base, the white bready character on top of that. Then you've also got you've got that nice kind of bread. You've got that nice kind of bread crusty base in there, which feels a little bit drier and a little bit more grainy. You've got a little bit of an almost kind of crackery layer in there. Then you get the kind of brown bready, rye bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy. You've also got the fluffy white bready layer above that, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy too. Then you get the dense wheaty notes just going over the top of that, and the wheat does have a little bit of a bitiness to it on that back third of the palate, but you can really feel the density of it there. So yeah, I like that about this one. Yeah, on top of everything else, then you get the yeasty notes out of the beer. For me, the yeasty side of the beer is quite interesting because it's actually very sweet. So you can feel that sweet, dense, wholemeal brown bready character. It's like a really dense, very sweet wholemeal brown bready character in the yeast. It's got a little bit of a crackery and woody note to it, but as I say, quite minimal. And then wrapped around that, you've got a lovely little bit of, yeah, you do have a little bit of a kind of sweet McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to it. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. It's got a little bit of a kind of honeycomb wrapped around it, but definitely on that back third of the palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together, which is great. But on the hoppy side of things then, let's move on to that. In the back corners of the palate, you do get a nice little touch of earthiness there. That's most likely attributed to Mosaic, but as you move further forward, you get this nice kind of oily, smooth green component out of this one. It's not too spicy as you reach the front corners of your palate, but it certainly does have a little bit of spiciness to it. And I do suspect, just from the way this green component's coming out, that it is a little bit more of a, I think there's a little bit of cryo oil and stuff in this one, so yeah. So yeah, for me, look at this lovely kind of you do have this lovely kind of oily floral character in this one, a little bit of kind of spicy floral aromaticity, and then round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy. There's a wee touch of zestiness coming out of this beer as well. And just in that grassy character around the front curve of the tongue, but the green component, as I say, is quite oily. That makes me think, you know, there's a bit of incognito or a bit of cryo oil going on, probably with the Citron Mosaic. I'm not sure if they've done that with Nelson Sauvin yet. It's probably still your T90 pellets. But yeah, interesting. So on the fruity side of things then, let's have a little look at the front third of your palate. That border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there. There's a wee touch of, yeah, there's a little touch of a kind of, I would say, a little bit of sweet rye bread underneath and the white bread on top. Then the base of that front third of your palate, you've still got the bread crust in there, a little touch of the sweeter rye bread, then the dense white bready and wheaty character for sure. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on that. So for me, the fruity side of the beer is really nice. It's really soft and creamy actually. This is where the beer shows its kind of creamiest side. At the back of that front third of your palate, you get this lovely, you do get a bit, I'm not getting much of the way of grapefruit as you might often get from Citra, but it's got this big, oily, sweet passion fruit. There's a little bit of a sharper peach in there, and as you move further forward, big, oily, juicy mangoes, quite ripe. I wouldn't go as far as guava. Guava for me is very kind of green in its flavour, but yeah, very ripe, juicy mangoes. As you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, really soft, kind of apricot-y notes underneath. So yeah. And yeah, the way that goes together is really very nice. As you move into the front half of the front third of your tongue with this one, I do think, just from these fruity flavours, I do think this beer is a bit more citra heavy than it is with the other hops. But yeah, you can get a little bit of that oily, white, green, grapey, gooseberry sort of thing from the Nelson Sauvin. That comes out a wee bit more into the aftertaste. Just behind that front tip of the tongue too, you do get a bit of a kind of lemony, limey character, which will be the citra again. And then above all of that, you do get a little bit of you get that lovely kind of oily tangerine note from the Mosaic. So all three of these hops are showing their face, if you like, but definitely the I would say the Citra just feels a little bit more present than the other three. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's 50-25-25 rather than a 33-33-33 ratio actually. So yeah, the way that the beer goes together in that regard is really nice. It's a big oil. The more that I drink of this beer, the more of a kind of oily New England IPA it is. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the flavour. I think we've covered everything we really need to say with this. But mouthfeel wise then, so mouthfeel wise for me, this beer, it's bottom end of full bodied, top end of mid bodied. Carbonation is really, really smooth on this one. Lovely sort of silky, smooth and creamy character to it, but at the same time it feels quite oily. As we said earlier, the malt base has a bit of graininess underneath, a bit of smoothness in the middle, and a bit of an oily sweetness on top, which I really do like. The IBU count in this one, I suspect, is between 30 and 40. It feels a little bit more bitter into the aftertaste, and usually when you have a double IPA like this, it's going to be more along the kind of 40 IBU line, because that just balances out the malt base a wee bit better. Then you've also got that big, juicy, fruity character out of this one as well, and it's quite an oily, fruity note. It leans more toward a kind of tropical note, but you do get even more citrusy zestiness into the aftertaste too. But overall, very, very nice beer. The fact that it's 6 months old is interesting, because I think it holds up very well, and it seems, I do wonder how much of the kind of sweeter, oily character that we're getting out of it is because it's that little bit older. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. Very positive reviews, very positive vibes from this beer, I should say. But I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Gulp Fiction, an 8% New England Double, New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever we're going to call it, IPA from KCBC, Kings County Brewers Collective in Brooklyn, in New York, a little bit south of us here in Connecticut. So, until the next time, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from KCBC as well, and we'll see about returning to them. But check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.